Welcome. I'm Kinetic Symphony. I hunt down and report on weird and true mysterious stories, from glitches to the paranormal. Would you like even more content? Here's my Patreon. Now onto the stories. This is my channel's weekly compendium, ending Monday, March 6, 2023. Case file number 997, written by Smeetco Pro, The Ancient Neolithic Time Anomaly. To set the scene, the back of my house borders a forest. The area was frequented by Neolithic people, as there are monuments nearby, and a funerary urn was found about 5 meters from my backyard. It's a place where druids would have performed rituals and ceremonies. Anyway, I'm hanging up washing one day with my mind wandering off to all kinds of things, rather than concentrating on the mundane chore. I'm listening to the birds, the wind and the trees, and thinking what a lovely warm day it is. My eye then catches a crow landing about a meter in front of me, but the thing is, it's landing in slow motion. I'm looking at this black bird, slowly landing on the ground with its wings outstretched, and then I realize it is deadly silent. No birds chirping, no wind, no washing flapping in the breeze, nothing. I snap out of my daydreaming and concentrate on what's going on. The sight of the slow motion bird and the silence sends my head into a spin. Am I having a heart attack? Am I alive? Are things slowing down because I'm about to pass out? What's going on? I let go of the peg in my hand and watch as it slowly falls to the floor, like a balloon in slow motion. I start looking all around me and everything has become still. The trees aren't moving, but my head and arms are moving like normal. I'm looking at the sky, clouds, trees, and all around me, and even the house's chimney vent, which always spins, is still as death. It feels like time has stopped, but the weirdest thing is the silence, just nothing. No noise, no sound, just nothingness. I look back at the bird, still stunned at what is happening, and suddenly a wall of sound hits me. The birds chirping, wind in the trees, the flapping wings of the crow as it takes off again, and a strange white noise which must just be ambient sounds. Everything sounds loud and clear. I stand there for about 5 minutes trying to wrap my head around what happened, looking around in disbelief. My heart rate is normal. I feel just fine. In fact, I feel pretty good, like I've just had some kind of out-of-body experience. The whole thing must have been less than a minute, like time lagged and then suddenly caught up again. That was more than a year ago, never experiencing anything like it before or since. Case file number 998. Written by Sufficient Data 9962. My mom put me to bed. When I was about 10 years old, I would go to bed at around 8:30 p.m. I used to fall asleep in my mom's bed. She had a TV in her room, so I would fall asleep to cartoons. And when she would come up to go to bed, she would wake me up and take me to my bed. One night, I was sleeping in my mom's bed as usual, and I woke up to the door opening. I didn't wake up to look at who it was, because I figured it was my mom. It was just me and her living at our house. I heard her walk towards the bed and then stop. It was a good 5 minutes before I heard the bed creak from her laying down. She laid down and put her arm around me. She never said anything, and neither did I, since I was half asleep. She didn't wake me up to move me to my room, so I just figured she was letting me sleep in her room that night. I drifted off. When I woke in the morning, I rolled over and saw my mom was gone. I walked downstairs and saw her sleeping on the couch. The title screen for Pretty in Pink was playing on the TV in the background. She woke up and smiled and asked me what I wanted for breakfast. I told her I'd just make myself a bowl of cereal. I headed to the kitchen and turned around to thank her for letting me sleep in her bed last night. She looked at me confused and said, "You didn't sleep in your room?" I told her no. She said she fell asleep on the couch. I said, "No, you came in the room last night." She looked at me even more puzzled and said, "No, I've been down here the whole time." I kept telling her, "No, you laid down next to me, and I even remember you putting your arm around me and stroking my hair." She looked horrified. Again, we lived alone. My mom has no history of sleepwalking either. To this day, my mom and I are still freaked out by this and don't really like to talk about it. Never happened again. Never had any other paranormal activity in the house either. Bonus file, written by Accomplished Work 454, The Cuyahoga Valley Shadow Monster. I'm from Ohio in the United States. When I was in 4th grade, 10 years old, 19 now, me and my buddies were out in the woods behind my buddy's house. We were always back there growing up. There was a creek we would hop over, and just on the other side was a farm with some horses. One day, we had just jumped over the creek, but were still in the woods right by the creek. That's when we heard what sounded like a little girl screaming at the top of her lungs. Being young kids, we all just froze, thinking it was odd to hear such a vibrant scream in the middle of the day. About 5 to 10 seconds later, right in front of us, a black figure zoomed across some bushes and shrubs at lightning speed. We all looked at each other and then bolted out of the woods to my buddy's house. We were all in shock at what we just saw, and to this day we still talk about how creepy it was. It moved so fast there was no way it was human. And where I live, the only wild animals we have here are white-tailed deer, coyotes, and foxes. This thing was at least 6 to 7 feet tall and was black enough to look like a shadow or something. It didn't look like it was absorbing any light at all, or rather was absorbing so much light, it was the darkest black I've ever seen. I was just wondering if anyone else in Ohio, or the United States for that matter, has seen anything similar. I live right by the Cuyahoga Valley National Park, so maybe there have been some sightings there. But this was not in the national park, just a small patch of woods in a pretty suburban area. Case file number 999, written by Uramashi Yusuke. I predicted a mysterious figure would give me Spiderman. One evening last October, I was looking up Spiderman figures to buy, and I found a really cool one with movable fingers and toes, and I really wanted to buy that figure. But since it was an older one, it was extremely expensive. That night, I had a dream where I was at school, and some dude that I had never even seen before walks into my classroom and gives me the figure for free. The next day, I was at school and I was on my spare period, and suddenly, this teacher that I had never seen before comes into the classroom. He starts pulling out a few toys out of his bag, thinking he can donate them to the local preschool. My school is partnered with the preschool. One of those toys just so happened to be that one specific Spider-Man figure, complete with movable fingers and toes, and he gave it to me, for free. I was really happy, but at the same time, really freaked out since I had a dream the night before where a dude I had never seen before walks into my classroom and gives me the figure. After that, I never saw that teacher again. However, I still have that figure on my shelf. Case file number 1000, written by Emily Yancey, when the Postmaster delivers a 1000th glitch. Hello, people. I've been quietly biding my time, waiting for my glitch. Everything I'm about to describe came to light about 30 minutes ago at the time of posting this, when I, 49 female, drove to my parents, 75 female and 78 male, home to check on my dad. He was in the ER with chest pains earlier today and had been discharged. On to the glitch. My parents do not use forums and do not know about glitches in the Matrix. After the dust settled on, I said, "Is that okay?" My mom presented me with an envelope that was in her mailbox this week with my writing on it. No debate. This is my writing and exactly how I would address a card to my parents, front and back, including Shirley Temple stamps for my mom. Glitch number 1. Postmark is from July 2016, Los Angeles. That tracks with where I lived in July 2016, but how did it take 6.5 years to get to my parents' mailbox? Reasonable answers. The card was stuck in a postal bin or inside my parents' mailbox for 6.5 years. Okay. Then riddle me this part. Glitch 2. Yes, it's my handwriting on the envelope, but the card inside is a card I've never seen, and based on the pop culture references on the card, is not a card I would send, and the message inside the card is my aunt's handwriting with her signature. Yes, the card that's been in transit for 6.5 years is from my mom's sister and addressed and sent by me. Reasonable explanation. My uncle, aunt's husband, my mom's brother-in-law, and my favorite uncle could have handed it off to me for mailing when he passed through LA. This explanation isn't totally wild, because he travels a lot, and we always find a diner together, whatever locale he's passing through. However, I have zero recollection of us getting together during my 7 years in LA. nor any sort of card handoff, nor any prior card handoff that seems like this. Plus, why would my aunt in Georgia give her husband a card to give to me in California to mail to my mom in Virginia? So how did my mom receive a 6.5-year-old card mailed in my writing, but from her sister, on a day when my dad was in the hospital for a near-death experience? Also, just notice the "Happy birthday, Moo" makes no sense. My mom's birthday is in November. Postmarks are July 2016, so this birthday wish is 8 months late? Case file number 1001, written by Webborn 2622, when a delicious brew spills itself. Me and some friends went to watch a concert at our university. As we can be expelled for drinking on school property, none of us had anything to drink. After the concert, we went to the local student bar. A friend of mine got a round of beer for everyone. This girl in my group, we'll call her Anna, got a glass of beer, but put it in the middle of the table and didn't touch it as she was occupied with a conversation. No one touched the glass, but all of a sudden it spilled all over Anna. It didn't fall and spill, it spilled upwards as if it had been put down too hard, but it had been untouched on the table for at least 5 minutes. Everyone was surprised and confused. We all agreed that no one had touched the glass and that it had been done on its own. No one had had more than a sip of beer, and there were 3 people who didn't drink due to religious reasons. We were all equally confused. A bar worker came over and asked Anna what happened, and she said, "I have no idea." The rest of us also said we didn't understand what had happened. Someone literally said the words, "a glitch in the matrix," in response to the event. Bonus file, written by Becca Penny. My husband came home without coming home. I was working at home, and my husband had gone into his office. I worked later than usual, and when I heard him arrive home, as I was about to finish, I didn't go down to greet him. I thought it was a bit odd he didn't call up to me, but figured he realized I was still working, so didn't want to disturb me. When I finished working about 20 minutes later and went downstairs, he wasn't there, so I assumed he must have popped back out for something. When he arrived back, I apologized for not coming down the first time. He looked confused and said he'd only just got back because he'd been held up. I, clear as day, heard the front door open and close and him dump his stuff down. I remember being pleased he'd remembered his keys because he usually forgets. Then this evening, at around the same time, my motion-activated light-up cat ball went off twice with no one anywhere near it. I am a huge skeptic, but it's been an odd 2 days. Case file number 1002, written by Awesome and Wholesome, when an alien visits the dentist. I'm a dentist and I do mostly extractions at the moment. Had a patient come for one and got on it. She looked normal, healthy if anything, a bit timid, nothing out of the ordinary. During the procedure, I noticed something odd. Anesthesia is not nice, but she didn't even flinch. Doesn't hurt per se, but everybody at least blinks or at most squints their eyes, but not her. She had absolutely no reaction to it at all. Odd, I thought, but carried on with it, and during the whole ordeal, she didn't react to anything else either. Doesn't hurt, but is quite an unpleasant experience. Took a while, I had to remove a bit of bone to extract it, cut it in half and whatnot, but nothing out of the ordinary. When it was done, she got her prescription, quietly thanked me, and went on her way. Was then when I was cleaning up the office and instruments that I noticed they had no blood on them at all. Nothing, not a drop. I don't know how I didn't notice that she didn't bleed while I was doing it, but I didn't. The procedure involves quite a bit of blood, especially when you need to section the tooth to extract it. But she didn't bleed at all, period. Super weird considering that and the fact that she had no reaction to the procedures whatsoever. It freaked me out a bit. It happened 2 days ago. Case file number 1003, written by Traz O, when words are amplified beyond reasoning. This happened some years back. To this day, it makes me wonder if there's more to reality than science knows. And I'm a big fan of science. I was taking a short vacation with my fiancée and my parents. I had taken a job away from home, and they met me in the middle of our separation, at a beach motel on the East Coast. We had adjoining rooms, and having just got there, the doors were open. Liz and I decided to get some ice, so we took 2 ice buckets and headed for the ice machine. The motel layout was linear. We were some distance out from the central hub area, with vending machines and ice. Exactly 23 yards and some inches from turning the corner into the vending area, I heard my father say, "Where's Jim and Liz?" It was like he was speaking into my ear. I turned around, but he wasn't there. My mother said just as close, "They went to get ice." I looked at Liz. She'd stopped when I did. "Did you hear that?" She just said, "How?" We went back and asked my parents what they'd talked about without telling them what we'd heard. Eventually Mom said, "Wait, remember, you asked where Jim and Liz went?" The scientific skeptic in me kicked in, and I inspected the spot where we'd heard them. No vents or holes for sound to travel through. I measured the distance from the room using the admittedly imprecise method of counting strides. I arranged experiments where people in the motel room standing in various locations spoke sentences, often quite loudly, but no one standing where we heard them ever heard anything again. This isn't deep or significant, except that I can't explain it at all. Creepy file number 82, written by Bonacoso de Novara, The Night Park Terrors. Here's my personal experience after walking at night in the park near my old house. It's right on the edge of the city, and while the park looks like about 2 square miles of wild nature, it's surrounded by the city from 3 sides, and with a suburban area and mall from the 4th. Thus, it's not some wild land of Bigfoot, but apparently this place has something. As always, after work, I sometimes go to this park at night. The place is safe, no animals bigger than squirrels, so nothing to worry about. This time, I decided not to walk by its trails and alleys, but to go to the distant part, where on the bottom of a wide ravine flows a small, about 2 meters wide and shallow, stream supporting local ponds. Shores are open and have some sticky black clay on them in some parts, and a local village long ago was named Black Mud after this. But in many places, a meter or 2 from the shore, starts bushes and trees. I was going by this shore. Night is clear enough and no trees above the stream, so I could see without a flashlight. Nothing suspicious, only ordinary night forest sounds. Then I saw some movement behind in the bushes in front of me, where the stream turns from my shore. Here I should add that overall, while I am a bit afraid of darkness, yes, it's a strange combination with night park walks, I got used to this particular park, visited for years, so almost every part is very familiar to me. Besides, it's all surrounded by civilization. So I saw some movement in those bushes, about 15 meters from me. Slowly trying not to make any sound by stepping on some crunchy branch on the shore, I walked forwards. Between the bushes, there was some free space, enough for me to get forwards in between. Behind them, there was a small meadow, and then... Here, it's hard for me to tell. My mind, since then, makes me think that I saw a dog, but I can't remember any visual of the dog. No breed, no size, nothing. I do not remember what I saw there, but what I did next is I instinctively rushed backwards to the stream, took from the ground the biggest branch I could see, and ran away from there, looking backwards often, but there was nothing. I stopped only on the hill for half a mile, overlooking the forested ravine bottom around the stream. It was calm and quiet. I finally dropped my stick and, confused, went home. So far I have no idea what it could be, but back then I was in panic mode for a few minutes, and then it was okay again, like an on and off switch. Case file number 1004, written by Stretchy Unicorn. We took a trip on a road that never existed. This happened around 6 years ago. My partner lived out in the countryside. Not much around but farmland, bridleways and walking trails. The nearest shop was a petrol station which was about a 6-mile, 15-minute drive. There were only 2 routes from his place to the shop, and we always took the same route. We would do this drive an average of 4 times a week. Even when not going to the shop, but driving out to the town, etc., this route was very familiar. It was pretty much one straight road cut through the woodlands and forest. Your typical winding country lanes were for half the journey through the woodland, you would be on alert for deer randomly jumping out in front of you just to scuttle off into the woodlands on the other side. So on this night, we're doing our usual drive to get snacks and chatting about everything and nothing. But halfway through the journey, the woodland opened up a sort of crossroads that I had never seen before. As we approached it, my boyfriend slowed right down. A car was approaching towards us from the left and going down the road we are just leaving. It passed us as we sat there. Then my boyfriend proceeded to the right, slightly, where there was a miniature level crossing for trains. In the moments from approaching this clearing to crawling towards a level crossing, I'm looking around everywhere trying to work out where we are and looking to my boyfriend to see his reaction. At some point I quietly said, "What's going on? What's this?" He didn't answer me, but it's possible he just didn't hear me or didn't say anything as I wasn't asking a direct question and was thinking out loud. As we approached, my boyfriend stopped talking and focused, and I mean really focused, and drove carefully and slowly. The opening of the level crossing had about 3.5 feet of heavy wooden slats, then the 2 rail lines, then another set of wooden slats as you left the rail tracks. He had a very low sports car, and you felt every hard bump as we entered and left. The car purred over the slats, and then thudded hard over the rails. He was visibly and verbally conscious and careful of every bump. As we exited, we came onto a ridiculously tight lane, which was so narrow that the foliage was touching either side of the car. After perhaps 30 seconds, the lane naturally widened out, and my boyfriend continued talking. I still had no idea where we were, so interrupted him with what I considered to be a rhetorical question. I said, "Hang on, we've never come this way before, have we?" Confused, he said, "Yeah, this is the only way we come." So we're going back and forth, and he's asking how I don't recognize where we are, and our tone between each other is getting heated as we both become frustrated with one another. I eventually say how I've never seen that level crossing before. At this point, he vocally stumbled on himself and very loudly said, "Level crossing? What level crossing? What are you on about?" This conversation is taking place as we're still driving, and after a minute, I recognize where we were, and everything was as it's always been. He goes into the shop, and I stay in the car, feeling frustrated and confused. Whilst he was in the shop, I'm running over our conversation in my head and slightly uncomfortable that he didn't understand what I was asking or how he didn't see the level crossing. He comes back, it's more relaxed, and I calmly insist that we must have come a different way, even though that made no sense to me as the last leg of the route was the same, and there's no other way to get to that particular road. To prove a point, which was irrelevant, he drove back the only other route. This confirmed to me that he had no idea what I was even asking and was clearly baffled by what I was suggesting. We got back, and eventually we let it go, and he laughed it off saying I imagined it or was thinking of a different place and had merged 2 memories together. So, over the following weeks, I scoured every single map I could find. Normal maps, ordnance surveys, Google Satellite and Google Street View. I even went on different train enthusiast websites where there are lists of every level crossing and what type of crossing they are, etc. There was no trace of it. We drove that route 2 days later and it was the same as it ever was. I had never seen that level crossing before and never seen it since. This area is known for the Bluebell Railway, so I even looked into old, disused railway lines, etc. I searched out everything you can think of solidly over a 2-week period and found nothing. I let it go for a bit and would search a few times a week, then a handful of times a month. After about 4 months, I had solidly scoured a 30-mile radius of that entire route. I did this to try and find even an illogical and irrational answer. For instance, that perhaps there was a diversion and we didn't notice it. But that's impossible as there's nothing like that even on the longest diversions or detours. It simply didn't exist. We had been driving that route for around 3 years when this happened, and continued doing it for another 2.5 years after. I knew this area incredibly well through driving around and hiking. I will never understand what happened that night. I would love to know if anyone has experienced anything similar, or any suggestions as to what may have happened. Case file number 1005, written by Ellie Fakre, The Brightest UFO. A few years ago, I rented my father's second property. It's pretty far back in the woods off a very small 2-lane dirt road. One night, I was sitting in the main room of my recliner watching YouTube With just the outside deck lights on, I started to get a feeling up the back of my neck, as you do when you're creeped out about something nearby or whatever. The next 10 minutes were strange. I have super blurry memories of slowly walking out the front door and down the deck steps, looking up at a giant white light floating above the cabin, and the second I looked at it, I collapsed on the bottom of the stairs and a giant, what seemed like, electric shock went through my body. I started crawling up the stairs and felt like every inch of my body was being pulled super hard back away from the front door. I don't remember if the area was lit up from the light, but it sure felt like it. The rest is a blackout, and I woke up standing at my kitchen sink with the water running hot all over my head and all the lights on in the house. Am I crazy, or did I experience something weird? Thanks. Case file number 1006, written by Cherry Cranberries. The officer who teleported me to safety. I was telling the story to someone today. I haven't spoken about the story in many years, so I thought I might share it. This happened about 10 years ago. I was barely a 20-year-old girl living in Massachusetts. I was driving to my college at the time. I commuted to school, and this particular day was very snowy, icy, and sleeting. I don't know why school was in session, but in the Northeast, they don't take bad weather very seriously. I think we've all seen the memes of cars with piles of snow on them saying they're heading to work. That's New England for you. So anyway, I'm driving to school and I was late. The road of which I was driving on was a 2-lane highway that was very steep. Between the 2 lanes were Jersey barriers, and the opposite flow of traffic was on the other side. Like many roads in Massachusetts, there are no shoulders, and there were no turnarounds. Once you were on the highway, you had to drive another 5 miles before you could pull off to the closest exit. It was a type of highway where if your car stopped, you were screwed because there's nowhere to pull off. Again, lack of shoulders and grass, just concrete barriers on both sides and barriers in the middle. It was a dangerous highway that many people had died on. Even a friend of my mom's coworker died on it. I was driving pretty fast for the type of weather I was in. I was in the far left lane and could see a tractor trailer in the far right, but behind my car. Suddenly, my car fishtailed and I spun out completely. I was suddenly in the far right lane, facing oncoming traffic. The tractor trailer was coming at me, like coming at me. There was no time or place to go. I remember this feeling came over me, like my brain didn't register what was happening. And suddenly, out of nowhere, my car is in reverse, and I was in a miracle of a small shoulder, but still facing oncoming traffic. I don't know how it happened, and I remember being in shock how I did that. The tractor trailer blew by me in seconds. I mean, I was literal toast if I didn't get into that shoulder. Breathing heavily and saying to myself, did I really just do that? Within what must have been 10 to 15 seconds, I hear a few knocks on my driver window. I know it was about 10 to 15 seconds because I had the Britney Spears song Stronger on, and the car flipped at the bridge of the song, and the knock came at my window at the last chorus. I opened the window, and a young male police officer is now staring right at me. He then says, "Hey, I saw your car spin out." I see the lights behind now, and his car parked right behind me in the same small squeeze of a shoulder that ended very quickly up ahead. Clearly seeing me in what probably looked like total shock, he continued on, "You were going too fast." I said, "Yeah, I know." And then he said in this nearly soft but direct tone, "Stop rushing. Why are you rushing? You need to relax, okay? Relax." It was something like that. He then says how he's going to stop the traffic so that I can turn my car around in the proper direction and get back on the road. It's fuzzy how he did it, but I just remember him stopping the flow. I turned my car around out of the shoulder. Remember, my car was facing the wrong direction, so I wouldn't have been able to even turn the car around to get back on this icy and sleet busy highway, and slowly pull it back onto the proper direction I was supposed to be in. I continue on and look behind me. Normally you can see a cop pull out after you, see their lights on, or the car themselves if they turn it off, etc. But all I saw were the cars that were waiting for me now driving. It's weird to explain this, but the cop disappeared in seconds. I mean, disappeared. Like I said, there was nowhere for this cop to go. The only turnaround, the small cutout median that cops tend to use to go in different directions, wasn't for another mile ahead. and the first exit off wasn't for another 5 miles. The small little shoulder ended right after where I was, and this cop was nowhere to be seen. It was so weird. I remember looking back several times in the mirror and saying, "Where did he go? What?" It was so odd, I thought about it all day. I came home and told my parents what happened. Of course, in shock that my car spun out in the opposite direction and I almost hit a tractor trailer. I told them exactly where this took place, how my car went into reverse in which I have no recollection of, and the magical cop that showed up in 10 seconds and disappeared as fast. My own parents thought it was the strangest thing. I've told the story to a few people I know who also have called it very weird. I think, and my parents agreed, either that cop was sent by God at that exact moment I needed help, or he wasn't really a cop at all. It's been a decade, and I still think about this encounter. Without that man, I wouldn't have been able to get back on the highway unless I took a risk or sat there in confusion and shock with the possibility of someone hitting me while snow, ice, and sleet fell on my car. It was a very peculiar and life-saving encounter I won't ever forget. Case file number 1007, written by Symbiotic Tau. Impossible British music. So just now, I was listening to Rural Britannia, as one does, and I turned off my phone. I am certain of this, and went downstairs to get batteries for my Xbox controller and a glass of water. As I neared my room, I heard a sound again. I entered, and I could clearly hear the tune of Rural Britannia still playing. Then it stopped. Then I heard a man sing, without music, "And Britons will never be slaves," which was odd, as this was not the same voice from the song I was listening to, not the same emphasis, and not even the same words. There's no "and" before Britons. Then silence again. Confused, but assuming the phone must still be on, I picked it up. It was still turned off, just as I was certain I'd left it. Nobody else in the house is awake, and I have never experienced hallucinations. I haven't a clue what to make of this. Case notes for file 997, the ancient Neolithic time anomaly. So I'm wondering, did the ancestors that used to live there, did they build these monuments and all of this interesting stuff around the site because in this specific location, they knew that weird things would happen, such as this time anomaly? Is it related to that specific location? It's a very interesting idea, and perhaps it is. For them, of course, they would attribute it to the gods or other mysteries of the universe that have no possible answer. They wouldn't have any knowledge of glitches in the Matrix or the idea of a simulation. It wouldn't even be speculative possibility. It does seem that there are specific areas of the world where time will flow inconsistently, perhaps pause or slow down tremendously, but only for certain individuals. For others, they don't notice anything different happening. So it's down to perception of time, maybe not time itself. I wonder if you actually lost a minute, if there was a gap of a minute that you would have noticed if you had checked your phone before this and after. Was time still flowing freely for everyone else, and it was just your perception that was garbled for some reason? Something about that environment, connecting with your mind, had that effect, it seems like. Case notes for file 998. My mom put me to bed? So yeah, the obvious question here is, was your mom astrally projecting? Was it her spirit that put you to bed? That came to see you in bed? Or was it just her sleepwalking? Well, I don't think it's sleepwalking because it just happened once, as you said, it didn't happen again or before. A single case of sleepwalking and it never happens again? I don't think that's how it works. I could be wrong, but if it's not, then yeah, it would just be her soul paying you a visit for some reason. But it still begs the question of why. You know, we have all these accounts of things happening. I'm very confident of all these things happening. Ghosts, spirits, time anomalies, quantum immortality. Quantum immortality seems like a property of the universe, kind of like asking why gravity exists or why the electromagnetic force exists. It's just a fundamental nature. There's no trigger needed besides death. But for all these other glitches, it seems like a trigger is needed, but it's not clear what that trigger is. Why, if a person is able to astrally project, is it just in specific cases? I guess it's a certain mental state that's required. Perhaps she was thinking very fondly of you, very intensely about you while in dream state, and that projected her soul towards you to comfort you. It's kind of wholesome, really. I don't know if that's how it works, but it makes sense. Case notes for the creepy file number 81. The Cuyahoga Valley Shadow Monster. So my first thought was of concern for the little girl. I do hope that her scream was merely reaction to seeing the shadow monster as well, and not that it attacked her or anything like that. Of course, you're just kids. I don't blame you for not rushing towards that sound of danger. Bolting home is probably what I would have done as well. I'm not a Bigfoot kind of guy. I mean, maybe Bigfoot exists. But it's certainly true, I think, that there are plenty of beasts and animals out there that we haven't fully discovered and mapped out yet. The world is just too big to have discovered it all. Maybe plenty of them live in caves or stuff, like The Descent, which is one of the most terrifying horror movies ever made. Don't watch it unless you want to be petrified for the rest of your life. And definitely don't go in spelunking in caves. Don't recommend it. And now time for the quote of the day. Do not go where the path may lead. Instead, go where there is no path, and make your own. Ralph Waldo Emerson. I love this quote. I think it's all about charting your own destiny. I don't like the idea of fate. Maybe we live in a buffered reality, but we still made our own choices, and the universe we play through is of our own making, our own choices. You don't want to live in an environment where no matter what you do, the end result is guaranteed. No. You want to be able to explore the unexplorable. You know, this is something I've noticed in MMORPGs is that the magic is lost nowadays because there's too much information. Everything is instantly known, even for a brand new game. So what's the point? There's no discovery to be had anymore. Discovery is the key. As they say, knowledge is kind of a curse. It saps the fun out of life. If there's no mystery, what's the point? Case notes for file 999. I predicted a mysterious figure would give me Spiderman. Yeah, this would be classic foresight from the dream realm. I think especially when we're dreaming, we're more attuned to the entire universe and all of its information. Any external stimuli that may exist that we're not aware of when we're in our conscious state is there for the plucking when we're dreaming. Most people can't access it, even when dreaming. But I think especially when you're younger, your brain is more open to the possibility of using that information. You're not closed off to it yet. So in essence, I don't think the man was supernatural in any way. I think it was just an ordinary, good Samaritan, charitable man, and you simply downloaded the information of the coming day. What he would do. It's kind of cool that you were thinking about receiving this gift and it just happened so quickly after. But I think that's just a coincidence. I think the fact that you downloaded the information is the glitch part. Sort of glitch, you could say. Case notes are file 1000. When the Postmaster delivers a 1000th glitch. Well, look at that. We hit 1,000 glitches. On the channel, anyways. I narrated a few before I officially started to number them, but still. Awesome. Woohoo! Onward to 10,000 now. So, I have heard of stories where people receive mail extremely late, and I would imagine that there is some glitch in the system in terms of however they organize mail, and would depend on your local post office as well. So that could happen, that it's just a very delayed piece of mail. But I have to say, it's a weird business model. I mean, imagine ordering McDonald's and receiving it 7 years later. I think you'd be a bit irate. But yeah, what are the odds that this would happen on the day your father was discharged from the ER from some health scare? And then also, the fact that it's in your handwriting, you don't remember ever sending it, and it wasn't even addressed properly because it was wishing your mom a happy birthday when it's 8 months late, or I guess 4 months early, however you want to think of it. I don't know, unless it's literally a piece of mail from a different universe that somehow wound up here, and then in that universe you have a different birthday too, but that's a very massive difference, so I don't know. Honestly, outside of some weird prank, I got nothing. What a trippy glitch. And it's kind of cool, kind of fitting for the 1000th glitch to be stumped. Yay! Sometimes it's fun when you don't know the answer. Case notes are file 1001. When a delicious brew spills itself. I see two possibilities here. The first is that the universe is losing cohesion, which there are plenty of signs to that, like the black dots and objects disappearing and reappearing all the time. It seems like the universe is taking physics as a mere suggestion now and not a immutable law of itself. It's also possible that a spirit was involved. Prankster, I guess. It's not very funny. I guess a bit. Maybe in the chaotic neutral kind of fun, just for itself, the spirit. Kind of giving me Hogwarts Peeves vibes. Gotta step up your pranks there, buddy. Case notes for the bonus file. My husband came home without coming home. So I would say this could just be classic astral projection. Your husband projected his spirit all the way into the home without being there, maybe because his mind was so thinking, yeah, I really want to be home, but I'm stuck at work. That's possible. Could have just been thinking of you and missing you, his wife, and wanting to be home with you. The other possibility, though, because you mentioned the monitor system that picked something up twice that wasn't there. Maybe it is some kind of spirit involved in this case. I'm not sure, I'm kind of split between both, but those are the obvious possibilities in my mind. And now, time for the quote of the day. If life were predictable, it would cease to be life and lose its flavor. Eleanor Roosevelt. Indeed, I connect very well with this quote. I think if we reach a state where we know everything, then the magic is lost. What else is there to work towards? I mean, I guess you can still enjoy the fun of life, food and going out and stuff, but without any discovery, it's kind of like a mental entropy. A state of total equilibrium. Nothing else. No downs, but no highs either. I hope we don't reach that, and I don't think we're anywhere close to that, so keep on discovering. Case notes are file 1002. When an alien visits the dentist. So we humans are, well, any animal really, are incredibly varied, and it comes down to evolution. Our genetics are a blueprint to design us. Basically, if you want to build a house, you need an instruction set to follow, where to put the studs and the wide beams and so on, and all the nails, and everything else. Of course, the human body is immensely complex, unimaginably so. It'd be like trying to build a billion homes within a tiny confine, and it's figuring out a way to do it, where every process interacts with each other, amino acids and proteins inside of cells communicating with each other and taking instructions from our DNA in terms of what to do. Even though they're not thinking entities, they're just the computer code. It's operating on a set sequence based on parameters that are defined by our own DNA. It's incredible, really. Every person is going to have slightly different DNA, instruction sets, and these mutations can lead to interesting effects. Often, they have no effect, because it's changing DNA that doesn't really affect anything. A lot of our DNA is like basic instruction sets, but it's not going to change a higher level function. But if you do change one of those higher level functions or expressions, then you can have different traits entirely. Some people are born with 6 fingers instead of 5. Other people are born with extra things. Suffice to say, we are all slightly different. Now, most of us are similar enough that medical science still applies. But in cases like this, maybe rare cases where they should still have blood, of course, but not feeling pain, some people literally don't feel pain. And it's actually a detriment to survival, so it's not a gene that would be passed on, because it reduces your chance of reproducing. Still, the idea that she has a high pain tolerance is entirely possible in my mind. It's the lack of blood that makes no sense. Was this actually an alien? And if it was, why did they go to the dentist? Do they just want to examine how dentistry works? I guess maybe they'd have a fascination with that. And certainly you would know as the expert dentist that during these operations there would always be blood. It's not something you could mistake. It's not just poking someone with a little cleaning brush and no, there should be blood. No, this is chopping up a tooth or whatever you said. I believe you that there should be blood, and if there wasn't, that is an unexplainable anomaly to me. Don't know if it was an alien. That might just be my bias. Probably is. It's something. Case notes for file 1003. When words are amplified beyond reasoning. So likewise, I like to explain glitches away or anomalies, try to figure out what could cause them. If it's just normal science, that's cool. In this case, you do mention, air ducts, vents, anything that could move the compressed air, that is sound, through a medium to reach your ears. But even if it was through a vent, maybe if it was right next to your ear, then it could sound like it's coming. But even then, there would be an echo effect. You would be able to know it's not just from someone standing behind you or something. Maybe that could have explained it, but like you say, there were no air ducts or anything. You even tried to talk in the room where they were, and no one heard it after the fact. So something happened there that carried the voice over. Now, did it actually compress the air and somehow just amplify it? Well, probably not. No one else reported hearing some gigantic boom that would be required to transmit the pressure wave that far. So it seems like, for some reason, maybe because they were thinking so intently about you, their voice carried telepathically into your mind. That's a rare one. Not one you hear about too often, but I guess if we're able to push our souls forward, astrally project in the world, then maybe we can do the same with our own thoughts directly. Rather interesting, but it's not something that I hear about often. In fact, I don't know if I've read a glitch like this before. Maybe once or twice, but usually it's more of an instinct that the other person feels, like someone they love is in trouble or hurt. but not directly hearing your thoughts. That's a new one. Case notes for the creepy file number 82, Night Park Terrors. So again, we're reaching points where there are creatures that are appearing all over the place, it seems, like on roads and forests and everything, where fear is evoked, and I don't know if they're trying to make themselves seem more terrifying than they are, or these are real monsters that are messing with people's brains, but they're actually terrifying and mean us harm. It didn't chase you, whatever it was, and it really is the most important point that your mind couldn't even process what it was seeing. Maybe it was an alien. And just to say, if aliens are here, they probably would have technology that could warp our perception of something, and if we're seeing it, we instinctively know we're not supposed to. Now, of course, why would an alien be in, not Central Park, but equivalent to Central Park in wherever city or town you live in? I don't know. It seems very odd altogether. I don't think any random beast would have that kind of power. It doesn't seem quite right. And what the hell was it doing in the middle of a city park? I haven't heard of any stories where someone is reporting in a city area to be attacked by any kind of wild beast or supernatural fear inducer. You'd think there'd be reports of that, so maybe it was just hiding, and it didn't want to be found at all. This is like its defense mechanism to make you run away, instead of having to fight. And now time for the story of the day. Once upon a time, in a small village, nestled at the foot of a great mountain, there lived a young boy named Taro. Taro was known throughout the village for his kind heart, quick wit, and unquenchable thirst for adventure. One day, Taro decided to climb the great mountain that loomed over the village. Many people had tried before him, but none had succeeded. Undeterred, Taro set out on his quest, determined to reach the summit. As Taro climbed higher and higher, the air grew thin, and the terrain grew more treacherous. He slipped and stumbled, but he always got back up and kept going. Finally, after many days of climbing, Taro reached the summit. The view was breathtaking. He could see for miles and miles, and the sun was beginning to set, casting the sky in a magnificent array of colors. But, as Taro gazed out at the beautiful vista before him, he felt a deep sense of loneliness. He had achieved his goal, but he had done it alone. He realized that the true beauty of life comes not just from reaching our goals, but from sharing our experiences with others. With this newfound wisdom, Taro made his way back down the mountain and returned to his village. From that day on, he devoted his life to helping others and bringing people together so that they could share in the beauty of life with each other. And so the moral of the story is this: life's greatest joys are meant to be shared with others. Whether we're climbing mountains or simply enjoying a beautiful sunset, we should always seek to bring others along with us on our journey. Everything is better with other people. Even though I'm an introvert, I still believe this. And if you don't have someone else to share your experiences with, at least get a pet. Having a dog by your side is such a massive boost to one's morale and happiness. But really, you want to find someone that you can love. Not just sexual, that's to the side. It's not the most important thing. It's someone that you connect with emotionally, intellectually, and can share in all the struggles of life. Not just the achievements and the rewards, but the struggles too. That's how we build character. That's why going to the gym is awesome. Even though it's a struggle, you're pushing your body to its limits and beyond. But that's the point. You want to grow together. Case notes are file 1004. We took a trip on a road that never existed. Yeah, you were very thorough in your attempt to explain away this anomaly or mystery, thinking about tree loggings, abandoned railway tracks, and all kinds of manner of weird and unusual explanations. But I think those would be rather rational. But to me, it's very clearly a glitch because there are no railway lines running anywhere nearby the route that you were on. So it's inexplicable. It's not like they just came by and removed them. Plus Google Maps, the satellite images, would have buffered images. They're not like updated every day or anything. I think it's every year, or months. So you would have seen it. The only explanation to me is that you were temporarily in a new universe, one where there is indeed a rail line running in that area, with this extremely narrow road that is just bizarre. I've never been down a road so narrow that there would be foliage on each side that would touch the car. I guess maybe if it was just unkept, a completely abandoned road, but it's just this game we play. There are plenty of concurrently running simulations or versions of the game, and some are very different, like in this case. And just for a moment, you were occupied in that different universe. For some reason, I don't know why, there are crossovers sometimes. Quantum immortality is clear, but that's well defined. There's a single parameter. You have to die first. and then your soul moves over permanently, unless you die again. But in these cases, they're just temporary crossovers. Maybe there's places in the world where the membrane is thin enough where you just cross over. But why are you pulled back then? What is governing that action? It's unclear. But this would also explain why your boyfriend didn't understand what you were talking about, because for him, there was no crossover at all. It was just the normal road that you always take. There was no mini-level crossing or railroad or narrow road, nothing like that. Case notes for file 1005. The brightest UFO. No, definitely not crazy. The bright light is usually indicative of some kind of memory wipe, and the sense of confusion is also associated with this. Whatever form of memory suppression that aliens use when they abduct people isn't perfect. Yeah, it'll suppress your memories almost always, unless you actively try to go back and retrieve them via hypnotherapy. But just a normal experience, you'll feel confused, dazed, disoriented, perplexed, but you won't know exactly what happened. The memory won't be there. Sometimes they implant false memories, it seems, as well, but maybe that's more advanced and doesn't work on everyone. For everyone else, it's just a gap, where you don't understand how you got from the porch to the kitchen sink with hot water running. But the only good news I can offer is that I don't believe these aliens are malicious. Maybe not exactly aligned with our ethics, to abduct someone is rather not exactly a good act, but they wouldn't think of it. The worst case, I think, is that they see us more like we would view ants, so they're not trying to exterminate us, they just don't really care, or think of us as that relevant or worthy of moral consideration. Hopefully not. One way or another, though, it's pretty clear that they want to understand us, physically at least, so they're abducting and studying us. In a way, indifference is almost more terrifying, but we can only speculate on that and just hope for the best. And now time for the quote of the day. I've missed more than 9,000 shots in my career. I've lost almost 300 games. 26 times I've been trusted to take the game-winning shot and missed. I failed over and over and over again in my life, and that is why I succeeded. Michael Jordan. Now isn't that something to think about? It's reminiscent of Thomas Edison and the 1,000 light bulbs. 999 times attempts to get it right. All failures. Every single time thinking, I'm pathetic, I'm worthless, I can't do this, there's nothing, it's hopeless. But it's not. If you just keep going, you'll eventually get there. It might take 10,000 tries, I don't know. The only guarantee is if you give up, you'll never be successful. So don't give up. Keep going. Success is right around the corner. Case notes for file 1006. The police officer that teleported me to safety. I wonder what mixture guardian angels have with quantum immortality. So if you consider that quantum immortality, we're saved from death in a certain sense, or we die in the one universe but our soul is preserved and moved over to a different universe, I'm always wondering if there's a limit to how far we can travel in the multiversal ocean. The islands that pepper out the ocean are the universes, and then between it there's still some medium. I don't know if it's just like physical space in the universe or it's something else, but presumably there is some kind of distance between the two. Or even if they're right next to each other, there's still, if you want to go to the one at the far end, a billion universes away, presumably that would take time. Maybe not. But if it does, there may be a preference for the transfer to take place to the nearest one possible. Now, maybe you die in like a billion universes in a row in the same way. And then the billionth and one, that's the only one left where you can be saved. But maybe the universe has a preference to keep you closer, and so to do that, they'll rewind time slightly, or offer some kind of guardian angel program. Maybe that's what this cop was. Of course, to you, you'll just see him as a cop, but in reality, it was just a program of the simulation that was saving you. Kind of like a good Agent Smith, in The Matrix, of course. I think that's a pretty cool idea. Case notes for file 1007. Impossible British music. So, auditory hallucinations certainly do happen. They are real. There's explosive head syndrome, for instance. But usually it doesn't manifest as entire lyrics, clear as day. I wonder if your phone somehow picked up a signal from someone else playing nearby, a similar song? Or was it just a momentary broadcast from a different universe, one where the song that you're listening to, Rural Britannia, was with a different lyric in tune overall? Or maybe just a variant in their universe. It's possible. I do often wonder just how many other songs or paintings or works of art or stories or movies or TV shows or games there are in other copies of the universes out there. How many variations of things we love, like Harry Potter, in a different universe, a billion leagues away. Did J.K. Rowling also write Harry Potter, but maybe a bit differently? Maybe Harry Potter is a girl. Maybe he's actually very powerful in that book, in that version. And Voldemort is evil, but maybe a bit misunderstood. I don't know. Just variations that could be interesting. I hope there's a way to go back and experience them all. That would require the real world to be almost eternal, and then we just can spend all of our days just experiencing each variation and copy, and just learning about ourselves and what we like, and it's just too cool. It's like the holodeck in Star Trek, but taken to quite the extreme. And now time for the quote of the day. It's hard to beat a person that never gives up. Babe Ruth. Yeah, very similar to Michael Jordan's quote. The same kind of moral to it, I would say. The whole point and premise of life is never to give up. As soon as you give up, you're essentially putting the controller down and just saying, well, life can't get better. I'm not good enough, or life is too oppressive. And maybe both are true in a certain sense, but you can improve yourself and you can succeed in spite of how difficult life is. Now, yeah, there are extreme situations where there's just nothing you can really do. But even then, like if you're born in Kenya or something, a very poor country, you can still try to make the best of your environment. It is sad, of course, in a way that life is so uneven, but you can't really change it. All you can do is try to make the best of the hand that you're dealt. There's great pride in that. Not to be the best in the world, but to be the best you can be.